We are here today. Zed is your host. We are here today to discuss with you this continuing stop genocide. Every time I say the word, I feel sadness. And we are here joined by Right Honourable Claudia Webb from Leicester East, one of our prominent members of Parliament. Claudia, good evening to you.
Good evening.
How are you?
Well, I'm fine. Obviously, like everyone else that are witnessing these horrendous scenes on their TV screens, I am distressed, to say the least. It's absolutely horrific what we're witnessing and what's happening.
So we are once again led astray with so many propaganda being the tool of rule in the media, Claudia. And I've just switched off to all of that, and we need to create solutions. We need to continue our campaign to stop the false propaganda going about everywhere. And today I was reading a story that Labour members, Keir Starmer, the deputy shadow leader, all are with the lobbyist who are lobbying them, and they're supporting intensively. They don't want to stop the ceasefire. Now, across the world, in the Western world, we get the same story, which is very sad. As we speak now, children are dying, losing their lives, people are losing their lives. And when does it all end, Claudia?
Well, firstly, I don't think we should ever turn away from what we're seeing. These are real incidents and issues. These are real murders happening in the Middle East, and we have to address ourselves to this. We cannot turn away. We cannot give up on these innocent civilians. We have to be continuing to call for a ceasefire. If not now, then when? We cannot continue to see right now, Gaza has been turned into a graveyard, and it has to end. And with a ceasefire, the point about a ceasefire, as opposed to what the Prime Minister is calling and the leader of the Labour Party is calling a humanitarian pause, the point of a ceasefire, it gives room for that sense of the war ending, the violence ending, innocent civilians from dying, the chance for negotiated peace, and the chance for talks. A humanitarian pause does what? Allows people to have some food and water, only for the bombing to begin again and for more people to die, more Palestinians to die, more civilians of Gaza to die. The killing must stop. The Israeli airstrikes and bombing of civilians in Gaza must stop. Collective punishment, as we know, is a war crime. Forcible transfer, as we know, are war crimes. The killing of children, tearing their limbs from them, these are war crimes, and it has to be called out. I think anybody, any parliamentarian, any politician that is calling for the Israeli airstrikes to continue ought to be in The Hague.
Well, we've been down this journey before, Claudia. You can remember Tony Blair with the weapons of mass destruction, and we killed 1 million people in Iraq. And we're getting pretty good at this, aren't we? Since the 1970 Balfour Declaration, specifically the last paragraph said that the Palestinian people have to be protected. That was in 1978 when I think the Labour Party was there. Abdul Mitai is also joined us here today on my left.
It was very clear in the Balfour Agreement that the indigenous Palestinian population has to be protected, which was a lie. And then for the last 100 plus years, all we've had is lies.
Now, how many people do we have to kill? Because if you recall, I wasn't here at that time, and neither was any of us here at that time, but we read our history and we see that 750,000 people, Palestinians, were killed then.
Yeah, that was in 1948.
That was in 1948, right?
In 1948.
Now,
and 5 million were displaced.
Now we are here. At the time the Nakba started, Now we are here in 2023. Have we not learned nothing from history? Do we continue genocide? When do we learn about humanity, Claudia?
Well, Britain has very direct responsibility. 75 years of the Nakba is a reality. But we've clearly got to hold Britain to account, which is why they have to be at the table calling for a ceasefire. We have to right the wrongs. Palestine has not been free. There's been no notion of enabling Palestine to be free. And that has to be the agenda. And what we're seeing now, actually, is Palestine or Gaza being turned from rubble to dust. What we are seeing is the people of Gaza, the citizens of Gaza, being driven into the Sinai desert, into the Egyptian desert. And that whole continuation of driving the Palestinians out of their land has been ongoing since the Nakba. And it's ongoing today. What we are witnessing are atrocities and war crimes. And what we obviously have to accept that no civilians should face this level of atrocity and violence, murder, and so on. We've got a situation where children, if they survive, have lost their entire families. Refugee camps being bombed. Densely populated refugee camps being bombed.
Okay, let me ask you.
No one can tell me that this is about revenge. That's a war crime, and we have to call it out.
I've got to ask you.
I'm really shocked, actually, that we aren't seeing more politicians, parliamentarians calling this out for what it is.
So I want to ask you a question directly. There are 650 members of parliament. In the last week, in the last 10 days, have you heard any of them call this out to that extent as you are doing so?
Well, we've
now?
put together, some of the tests of this is we've put together a parliamentary motion, what we call an early day motion, calling for a ceasefire, calling out the atrocities, saying that what happened on the 7th of October was wrong, that civilians shouldn't have been targeted, but calling out the atrocities and this so-called collective punishment of the people of Gaza, this so-called forced removal of the people of Gaza. And we've asked parliamentarians to sign, only parliamentarians can sign early day motions. And this begins to test the humanity, really, of parliamentarians and whether they're prepared to put humanity before their own careers. We've had just under 100, when Parliament was prorogued, as we call it. Parliament is closed in terms of one parliamentary term, ready to open again on the 7th of November. Up until that point, 95, 96 parliamentarians have signed that early day motion. That is nowhere near enough in terms of the numbers of parliamentarians that there are.
That is not even 13.5% now. Abdul Mita.
Yeah, I mean, look, I kind of have a bit of a question for you, Claudia. You're obviously an independent MP now, but if you were a Labour MP today, would you be able to speak out as you have just now?
Yeah, I mean, my position has always been to speak out, which is why, I'm always targeted. And I would have spoken out now. In fact, I would have probably resigned now at this point in time. So the reality is we cannot witness what we're witnessing, the inhumanity of what we're witnessing. It actually goes more than just inhumanity. It's having a leadership of a party that is meant to be about justice and equality, that is meant to be about accountability and ensuring that people are protected, is meant to be about supporting atrocities, supporting action against atrocities around the world. And we now have a Labour leadership that is toe in line with the Conservative Prime Minister, that is making arguments as to why the Israelis have the right to defend themselves and have the right to bomb refugee camps and bomb the people of Gaza. That is not the Labour Party that I know. And anyone who's in the party that is hearing this, hearing the leadership of the party say this and not do anything about this, not call for action, not protest and take action, I think is wrong. We've got to, right now, the Labour Party, unless it changes its leader, I don't see how it can be a justifiable party going forward.
What we are saying here is loud and clear: be the change that you want to see in this world. Don't just sit back, be an armchair critic.
I have one more question. I mean, just to follow up on your answer.
You keep it a short question because she has a long answer.
You're taking it anyway. So the thing is, look, you obviously, by your own admission, have said that if you were a member of the Labour Party, you would have resigned by now. So to speak out against the atrocities that are being committed in Gaza, effectively, the mainstream political parties would gag their members of parliament and their members, and you're not allowed to speak against it publicly anyway. Is that the correct assumption?
There's been you will know that there's been various memorandums put out by the party asking its members and particularly its political leaders, whether at local council level or at national parliamentary level, to essentially follow the shadow front bench person on their, in terms of the steer that they should take, that they should not put motions at local party meetings, and that they should not go against the leadership of the party. Now, clearly, there have been quite a number of councillors that have not only gone against the leadership in terms of saying that they reject the notion of just a humanitarian pause and they're calling for a ceasefire, like many of us have in Parliament, at least 96.
So do you think they should resign?
Well, some of them have resigned.
But very few. There are 17,000 councillors in the UK.
Some councillors, in terms of Labour councillors.
No, generally, all councillors in the UK.
What I'm indicating is some councillors clearly have resigned, largely Muslim councillors, I have to say, have resigned on principle. And I think that that's, in some ways, if your leadership isn't listening to you and isn't changing tack and is prepared to just say what the Conservatives are saying, then what is the difference between the parties? What is the distinctive difference? There is no difference, and you have to be able to. You cannot just watch what we're seeing every day on our television screens. Listen to the leadership of the party. Listen to human rights lawyers saying and justifying why Israel has the right to conduct these mass murders in the way that they're doing and causing these atrocities upon the people of Gaza. It's wrong. And, the arguments are just not there for Israel to do any of this at all.
So politically, Abdul Mita, I'm going to ask you a question. Who is standing to benefit going ahead a year down the line, 6 months down the line? We are going to have, look at the problems we're going to have between communities, the divide we're going to create, the animosity we're going to create, ban this, ban that. Where does it all end?
Well, look, if you look at democracy, if you look at the USA, it is a choice of two, Republicans and Democrats. Effectively, in most democracies in Western Europe, you have a choice of two, maybe three, right? Very clear from what Claudia has just told us, is that these political parties effectively are sold, right? They are committed and they're invested heavily into the Israel project. So whatever we say or do, if we think that we're going to be using the same old, allegiance to Labour and it's going to work, it's not.
So what you're saying is that there's a greater project there on the table which the parties have vested interest in, or the lobbyists.
I think it's about leadership. To be fair, because the leadership of the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn
But
wasn't this.
What Abdul
And-
Mitta is saying is that even the leaders are under the cosh, as they say, right? So moving on further, we haven't got much time. We've got 10 minutes left, and I want to discuss
the leadership under Labour, under Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party
Okay.
wasn't this.
Now we're going to
It
move
was the
forward.
same under Tony Blair.
Yeah.
Of course, but it wasn't this.
Jeremy was
Yeah.
someone
Now,
that kind of inspired
We're
hope.
going to get straight to the point. We've got 10 minutes left now. The Muslims have a relationship with Labour going back to the 50s, 60s when they came to England. That relationship is like they fall out, they make up. The Red Rosette always has the power to convert them back, bring them back on track. It has happened when the Gulf War happened, Gulf War I, Gulf War II. And it's a strange one, isn't it, Claudia? How they are married to each other for a long period of time, 60 years, 70% of them vote for Labour.
Let's be clear. Using facts, majority of the public want a ceasefire. The majority of Muslim
MPs and councillors.
The majority of the public wants a ceasefire. That is clear. Well over 70%, 80% almost want a ceasefire. That's the general public.
Yeah.
When it comes to doing a survey on Muslim voters, you know that 8% have traditionally voted Conservatives, and the vast majority have traditionally voted Labour. The vast majority who have traditionally voted Labour, that is why the issue has become an issue between the Muslims and the Labour Party right now, because Labour is now potentially losing that support from the Muslim voters. So it's all about voters, and Keir Starmer showed his hands when he talked about his concern for Muslim voters, that he decided to go and meet with the Muslim community in Wales, which was a false and failed meeting that he tried to project as something positive. And we heard from the Muslim, the mosque in Wales, how false that was. Now, the reality is, what he's missing is that the majority of the public want a ceasefire and want the atrocities to stop and believe that Israel are committing war crimes. And he's not reading that this is about the public more generally, not just about Muslim voters. But of course, there is significant support amongst Muslim voters for Labour. And in some key seats across the country, clearly the Muslim vote can determine the outcome of the election.
Right, there's a message I'm reading here saying that there's a false fallacy, a belief by the Muslims that if they are in the game, if they're in the council or in the parliament, that they can make a difference. Abdul Mitta, what do you say to that?
I think most of these guys that are saying this have clearly forgotten what happened in the Iraq War. Right, it was Labour in power at that time, and Labour took us to war, which resulted in the deaths of over 1 million people. Not that we ever count Muslim deaths, right? Because these guys have clearly said these guys are animals and they need to be moved. But leave that aside. We have forgotten what happened in the 2003 war when Tony Blair and his cohorts, Labour Party, took us into that war. We remained loyal, right? And now the same thing is happening over and over again, where we are being asked to remain loyal to Labour, right? When are we going to learn? When are we going to learn? We're an immigrant community. We've prospered in these countries. But what you must not forget is that you are citizens of this country. You have equal rights under that law to express. We're being gagged. You can't even say, you support Palestine outwardly. Our schools our kids are being brainwashed. The Minister of Education has written to every school, right, effectively asking teachers to ban the use of from the river to the sea, and to turn the narrative towards the Palestinians being, subhuman and the Israelis being, superhuman.
Yeah.
So again, when are we going to learn? Right?
So,
the leader, there's an issue, within the Muslim communities where our leadership is rotten, right? Nobody has the gumption to stand up and call out particularly this conflict. and to call out and say, this is genocide and we are not going to stand for it. Have you heard it from anyone out there, any of the so-called leaders? I haven't.
Right. Those of you who are new and just listening in, you'll understand Stop the Genocide is a campaign to get everybody on board on humane values. We don't want killing to the left, we don't want killing to the right. And what I find very sad is that we are sat here today talking about the reds, the blues, what will happen, what should happen, and thousands are losing their lives. Now,
we shouldn't be talking about the political infighting in the UK. This is a global issue.
It's a global issue.
This is an international issue. If we're going to, what's happening now actually requires some solidarity across the Middle East. I don't think that we can rely on the West to do the right thing. It's clear that the West is not going to do the right thing. They took votes at the UN.
So what is the solution?
At the UN, you saw that the majority of countries voted for a ceasefire, voted and basically said that Israel was wrong. But because of the setup of these international organizations, America has a significant veto on these votes, regardless of the numbers. And this is the way the West has set this up. The Middle Eastern countries, if we're going to move forward, it's going to take some effort from the Middle East countries, the Arab countries, to come together and to really be part of pushing for peace talks, ceasefire, and negotiating a way forward. Clearly, Palestinians need to be able to claim back their land, need to be able to return, need to be able to be recognized, and need to be able, the state of Israel state of Palestine needs to be free and needs to be.
So we remind you again, for the sake of land grab, millions
and resources
are being displaced, and atrocity.
Just to answer the point on that you made, Claudia.
We have 3 minutes, so please keep it short.
Countries, most of the Middle Eastern countries are products of the British Empire. Right? So trying to get them to come in and intervene and negotiate is not going to happen until their puppet masters, which is the USA and Britain, give them the go-ahead.
But when we talk about Muslims in the UK, we have to recognize that this is not just a UK problem, but we're talking about an international solidarity that is needed. We need a solidarity amongst people here, and I think in terms of public opinion, there is that solidarity. What we're asking for, I guess here, and including in Leicester, is people to demonstrate their actions, not by words, but by,
by good actions.
By deeds.
By deeds. People need to say, enough is enough. The atrocities can't keep going on. We can't have the Prime Minister, the government, the leader of the Labour Party, and all of the other shadow front benches and front bench teams going out and constantly saying that Israel has the right, and Palestinians are not recognised and they must die regardless.
Well, I must say, over the last 2-3 weeks almost, Claudia, you have been very outspoken on a daily basis on this particular matter, Stop Genocide, and your passion, your sincerity, your tenacity, I cannot put it, I can't say a word against that.
No, fair play.
Fair play.
Claudia, you've got another member on your re-election campaign team. Right?
And
so
I want you,
what we can.
I want you all to listen in right now. Stop genocide. Don't be part of a crime. Step away and do the right thing. I'm asking everybody in the world to come on board to say stop genocide, right? We got to keep saying it. Eventually somebody will say that this is not the right word to say, it's illegal. So before anyone comes to that stage, let's continue to pray and to say stop genocide. We don't want in my name. All communities, all caste, color, creed, cultures, traditions, religions, come on board. This is the road to humanity. I'm asking you, I'm begging you, and I'm praying that you will join us to say stop genocide. So I say goodbye from me and goodbye from
Claudia
Webb, Right Honourable.
Good night.
Abdul.
Abdul, good to see you. I look forward to meeting you again, and I hope that we can come together again and share our passions, and we pray that God will guide us, assist us, and we can move forward in a positive direction, right? And all you people who are listening in right now, please talk to your councillors, talk to your MPs, and bring them on board. I'd like to thank you all for taking part. Stop genocide. Let's say together, stop.
Stop genocide.
We definitely should stop genocide.
Stop genocide. Thank you very much.